So welcome to Generation Green's first and probably only podcast, but here we are. We're basically just going to talk really kind of low-key and relaxed just about the environment. None of us are experts. We've done minimal research, but we all feel we've got some things to say, and I think we all acknowledge how important the environment is and to care for the environment. So yeah, I'm Amy. I'll pass it on to Danielle and then we'll go around.
I'm Danielle. Amelia.
I'm Amelia.
I'm Leon.
And I'm Ava.
And we are
Generation Green.
Generation Green. Okay, so we are part of NCS, and we are doing this as part of our social project, but regardless, like, it's still something that we all really want to talk about. But yeah, anyway, okay. So I was going to ask Danielle if you could just kind of give like the brief overview of what global warming is and climate change, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I feel like we've always heard like a lot of the words like climate change and global warming, but we kind of don't know what they mean or like know in great depth what they mean. So what it is that global warming is basically when the average temperature of the Earth increases, and that's a byproduct of something called the greenhouse effect. So to break it down really quickly, you have in the atmosphere there's a layer, and that layer is, well, there's many layers, but one of the layers in the atmosphere is called the greenhouse layer. And the greenhouse layer contains greenhouse gases, and the three main common ones are carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor. So what happens is the sun will emit radiation, and that will come onto the surface of the Earth. The Earth will absorb most of that and then reflect it back into space. But what happens is the greenhouse layer will absorb some of that infrared radiation. So instead of all that heat energy escaping back into space, it's kind of keeping it in the Earth. And although that's a good thing if moderated, what's happening is people are releasing too much we're releasing a lot of greenhouse gases. And that is causing the greenhouse layer to thicken. And as the greenhouse layer thickens, it means that you're going to trap more and more of that heat radiation. So you're going to keep the Earth hot. And that's not great because it leads to the Earth getting warmer, hence global warming. And global warming causes climate change, which is like all the extreme weather that we've seen recently. So obviously if the Earth gets warmer, your ice caps melt, your sea levels rise, and that's kind of an explanation for all like the crazy weather that's happening. So everyone's like, oh, what's going on? It's been happening for years, but we're kind of just seeing the effects of that right now.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty fair to say that it's our fault. You know, it's humans that have caused it. So we need to look into kind of why, because then if we find out why, we can find out how to save it or improve it the best we can. So yeah, we're going to go through some discussion points. So I think we're going to start off with plastic pollution, which is absolutely massive. You know, it's one of the largest contributors to global warming. So basically the point was, should we just ban plastic carry bags on any plastic packaging, or is it necessary, you know, to have plastic?
I think in like some cases it is important to have plastic, like in medical situations for like hygiene and that. But if you're just using it to like package something that's going to be eaten and thrown away, I think you need to think about how it's packaged more.
Yeah.
It's often about planning ahead. You know, when you get to the supermarket, you don't always have a reusable bag or a way of carrying things. So you see the plastic bag, it only costs 5p, you buy it, and when you get home, you often throw it away. It's just about thinking about these things, taking little steps to prevent the need to use unneeded plastic.
Yeah, because I mean, go on, Eva.
Oh, like yesterday I had some chocolate and it was packaged in paper, which was obviously like quite surprising because it's mostly packaged in plastic, and it just seemed like a better option, obviously with everything's happening now. So it's like something easy we can do that will reduce plastic a lot.
Yeah, like sometimes I think it is unnecessary. Like I think it's 40% of plastic that's produced a year is just single waste plastic, which usually carry bags and kind of plastic cutlery and stuff. And that's the stuff that takes so long to like decompose. I think it can be up to like 400 years, which is awful. It's horrendous.
Yeah.
And I think it's the convenience side of plastic. Like Leon was saying, like it's 5 pence a bag. You've forgotten your bag. Just grab one. But then you're grabbing that, and then that's going to be on the earth for like hundreds of years, possibly. You know. And it's very rare that people. I mean, we obviously everyone gets plastic bags at some point, but I think it's also best if you are going to do that, don't just chuck it away. You know, like keep it.
Yeah,
because
reuse
they do
it.
have a life expectancy. Yeah, reuse that. But again, just try and avoid that.
Definitely. I think the issue with plastic is that it was a short-term solution that's creating a really devastating long-term effect.
Yeah,
definitely.
Especially the thing is that plastic actually, particularly plastic bags, they never really decompose. And when they're burned or when they're like left in the soil, especially in sunlight, they release lots of chemicals into the soil, and they can get into the oceans, which is obviously one of the main problems with the outrage of plastic straws in 2018 it was, and they can harm marine life. So although it's not fair to say all plastic is bad, because it has advantages, you know, people need plastic, people who can't open things just naturally need it. It's easier. I think there should definitely be a movement to reduce single-use plastics. Because that was like the main issue. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, because like when it was invented, because it was so convenient, nobody thought about the long life, like the whole process. Because when you design a new product, you've got to think about the whole like lifetime of it, and no one thought about like the last bit, like where you throw it away and it takes so long to decompose, because it was just so amazing.
Yeah, and it's only very recent. Like post World War II, that was kind of when the plastic revolution, you could call it, that's when it happened.
Yeah.
So think about how that's not that long ago, and think about how much plastic there is now. Like Daniel, you talk about oceans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this, I think there's about something like 300 million tons of plastic just in the ocean, you know, and it's there for the next I don't know how long, you know, and we can't go get it. The ocean's a massive place. You know, we can't just go retrieve all this stuff, and then what do you do with it, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. What do you guys think is the... Sorry, Leon, you were trying to speak.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what do you guys think is like the next step? Because I feel like a lot of people know that plastic isn't that great. So what do you think is kind of the next thing we can do to reduce our consumption of plastics? Do you think it's like to increase the price of plastic bags, increase the price of plastic goods?
I don't think increasing the price would help, because like with fines, it's selective to those who can and can't afford it, which should be about changing everybody's habits.
Yeah.
It should be about like community intervention and saying, do you need to use this, or should you reuse this, rather than fining people, because the people who can afford the fines would be giving out more and more waste because it doesn't affect them. But everyone needs to see that it affects everyone, not just those who can't afford it.
Yeah, that's true. There's definitely a demographic of people who use reusable bags more often, and that tends to be the older generation. So like what else, like how can we target? Because I think definitely younger people, or like younger to like 30, we use a lot of plastic. So how can we... I know obviously Amelia like said the fines weren't great, but like what's the next thing? Like how can we take it down? Because I feel like we, although not to apply pressure, this is a really big problem, and in the next 10 years, if it's not fixed, the effects are going to be irreversible. So what's something that we can do? Because obviously recycling is a great one, but it's just that we need to be removing plastic, not recycling it, obviously, but that is also a good...
I feel like with plastic bags, there's not like much excuse, because you can obviously, until it breaks, you can reuse plastic bags quite a lot and like just keep them and not keep buying them. But like with products that are covered in plastic and like that you buy at the supermarket, obviously that's quite different. But I feel like we need to find maybe an alternative that maybe like the government can do instead of plastic, because obviously there's nothing much more we can do about stuff like that.
A very recent step, which is not so much prohibiting plastic, it's more trying to find ways to work around it, is the introduction of recyclable plastics. So I don't know if any of you go regularly to the supermarkets and buy the plastic packaged fruit, but in Asda, my local Asda, they've started packaging it in entirely recyclable plastic, which means that you can take the whole tub, which is the tub and the covering, plastic covering, and put it in the recycling bin. But obviously the worry with that is not everyone will do that, and
Yeah.
a huge amount of that does end up in landfill.
Yeah,
And,
because sometimes when you read the back of the package, it says recyclable, but only at larger stores. A lot of people don't take it to the shops then recycle.
Yeah.
But a lot of this single-use plastic is like the stuff we buy when we're on the go. Because we're very on-the-go society, you know, everyone's always moving, so like meal deals and stuff.
Yeah.
I think you've got to like more think about like pre-planning ahead of what you're doing.
That's definitely something.
It's the convenience side of it.
Yeah,
That's what it is. It always has been. I think that's people. I hate to say it, but I think we're going backwards. You know, like well, we're relying too much on too many things now, and I think people forget to. I don't know. It's as if the environment and the planet that we live on is not important anymore to a lot of people, and that means that people don't often think ahead anymore.
It's like I think everything's indisposable, but it's going to run out eventually.
Yeah.
It's like the stuff that creates plastic will eventually run out because it takes so long to form.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do when
it
that
runs
runs out?
I know for me, it's very much about convenience. You know, it's really easy, especially when you're a young person, to be channeled into your life, what you're doing, and to sort of, in the moment, cast aside all these worries about the climate and about other people, because it does affect other people right now in different countries where they've experienced more harsh weather conditions. And it's about convenience and lifestyle. It's very much ingrained in our society to live like that and to be very consumerist.
Because if you go back to the point about like recyclable plastic, a lot of the times the plastic doesn't get recycled, even though it says they're going to recycle it, and it gets dumped in a different country for them to deal with.
Yeah.
So it's not just the consumer's responsibility; it's also other people.
Yeah, I feel like also it's quite hard because in different parts of everywhere, there's different things you recycle in. They're like in different parts, so you never know what you can recycle. Whatnot, and it gets quite complicated sometimes.
Exactly. So it's like the whole. We definitely need to make recycling bins more available. They definitely need to be clearer, because I know I'm guilty of like throwing cardboard and plastic in the same recycling bin, and that's probably not effective. So I feel like what happened like back in the olden days? People used to wrap things in paper. Like, what happened to that?
Yeah, like when you go to the grocery store and you get a paper bag, you know.
Yeah.
But then again, like that's a whole other thing with trees, you know. We can't use this for everything. I think as we progress and science improves, as we all know it is rapidly, I think there will be new discoveries, because I think I was reading something about the use of algae, which is non-toxic, you know, and it's incredibly easy to find and get. And I think they're looking into using algae because I think it shares similar characteristics to a type of plastic that's quite commonly used. I can't remember what plastic, but the more that research goes into these areas, the more that we can find alternative materials that are non-toxic, eco-friendly, and that do the exact same thing. You know, in the future there will be something. It's just worth putting that effort in and helping in any way. Kind of like simply like recycling. It's so easy to do, and I think if you are not sure, then you can easily search or get in touch with your local council to find out what kind of things you can recycle or where you can go to recycle things, you know. It's just putting that effort in yourself, I guess.
I think it's just
an investment in development and research.
Yeah, because like if you take, like we live in Leeds, and in the city centre there's these bins which are for the cups, so you get like coffee cups, like to recycle those, and I think, you know, they're quite a good idea.
Yeah, just be conscious when you're outside. Like, make sure if you are buying a coffee cup, make sure, like Amelia said, you're looking actively for places where you can put it and not just throwing it in the bin. Like, just be conscious, because I feel like a lot of us just kind of do. I just think, I'm buying this, where am I going to put it? or just invest in a metal water bottle. And if you can't afford a metal water bottle, because to be fair, they're quite expensive and not everyone can afford that, try and reuse your plastic water bottles, or reuse a cheaper water bottle, or try and avoid shopping with plastic bags. Try and use the ones that you have, or just invest in a stronger plastic bag made of not a stronger plastic bag, a stronger bag that you can reuse. Just try and be more conscious when you're shopping and avoid, and don't kind of give into the lazy aspects of just throwing it in the bin. Think, oh, this can go in a different bin.
Yeah, like if you're going to get like a Starbucks every day, like before work or something, wouldn't it be easier to just have a reusable cup that you take in to Starbucks and get a coffee, instead of getting a plastic cup every day, which is definitely not going to help the environment at all.
Because of COVID as well.
But there's so many things that you can make reusable, like you get refillable hand soaps and things like that. Like if you look into it, there are some like toothbrushes, you know, they're eco-friendly and they're good and biodegradable and good for the environment. Like if you do look into kind of things that you can, little things that you can swap out, and they aren't necessarily expensive, like girls, razors, you know, or razors in general for anyone. You can get reusable razors where you can just swap out the blades. They're eco-friendly. You know, there are little tiny things that you can make that in the long run will save you money and save the environment. So it's like a win-win.
Yeah, just before we move on to the next topic, which we probably should do soon. And they're also like local zero waste stores. Like I don't know if anyone, there's some in Garforth, there's some in Leeds. They're like zero waste stores, and you can actually go in and like weigh your food and like take it off. Amelia,
there's one of those in Middleton. And the Asda. But if you go back to the point about reusable stuff, a lot of places have not allowed you to because of COVID.
Yeah.
So that's of course.
Yeah, obviously there's a struggle at the moment, isn't there?
Fingers crossed that will be for longer. Yeah.
All right.
Okay, anyway, this on. Yeah. Okay, so the next thing that we were going to talk about was is climate change the greatest threat to human history? Which is quite deep. But what?
I say it definitely is, because a few decades ago, the scientist says that if we have, I'm not very good at the science, but 350 microparticles of carbon per million in the atmosphere, that is, if we were to surpass that, so that is the safe level, and currently we're at 400 per 1 million, so we're actually surpassed the safe level of carbon for the atmosphere, which will lead over the coming decades to a 2 degrees increase in the overall temperature, leading to mass extinction.
Yeah, well, NASA are sending sperm and stuff to space, so.
You go, Amelia.
No, you go. I've lost my point.
I just feel like obviously, if we can't have a world we can live on and breathe on, then there's not going to be a human race at all, you know what I mean? So it's just a bit, we need to focus on that, because obviously there's loads of problems in the world that we need to like conquer and get through. But if we can't live on this world to get through those problems, then it's pointless, isn't it?
Yeah, I think people often focus on, and it is important, like for example, we're literally living in a pandemic, like people focus on the present, like what's going on right now that's like affecting people, killing people, and people kind of bypass the environment. They're like, oh, you know, it's not that serious, nothing's happening right now. But then look at this month, like what's the date? It's August 2021 now, August 2021 now, last month, so July. The weather across the world is being horrendous. Like we had that heat wave, it lasted, I don't know, maybe a week or something. And the temperatures were just astronomical. I mean, for the UK, you do not get warm weather. So it was, just looking at that, I think that made me realise like climate change is real. It's happening. It's right now as well. You know, it's something that can't be left to the future. You know, this is what I mean. Like it's us that can make the change, you know.
It is such a weird trend, particularly in Western countries. The whole idea of cure over prevention, when everyone knows that preventing something from happening is better than scrambling to try and cure what happened. I mean, we look what happened in 2019, there were signs that COVID-19 was going to be a huge problem, and there were places that there were measures that could have been put in place early. Obviously, we couldn't have stopped it completely because it was a pandemic, and everything on authority, but there were measures that could have been put in earlier to prevent things from happening. We could have gone into lockdown earlier. There are things that we could have done to prevent things from happening. And this is the same thing with climate change. There are things that we can do, and obviously a lot of people are doing a lot of stuff. We don't want to sound like everyone's bad. Like, a lot of people are doing a lot of stuff, but there are things that we can do on a larger scale to prevent the worst from happening. I feel like it's a weird kind of thing. We have to wait for the worst to happen before everyone's like, oh, we need to fix it, when actually preventing it from getting there is so much more effective than trying to scramble and figure out how to fix the problem when it's there.
I think also, when you talk about climate change, it is very sciencey, and not everyone understands that. Like, I don't know a lot about science, but it can be quite inaccessible, the debate, and I think it needs to be more talked about and more well explained to reach a wider audience, so then everyone starts to do something to help. Because a lot of times when it's talk about, it's the politicians or it's the people with the money or the people going to protest. It's not people who don't understand or the people without education. So to get everyone to do something, I think it needs to be more well explained and talked about less.
It definitely needs to have a higher focus on the curriculum.
Yeah, definitely.
This is so back to like it's a threat, and that's how it needs to be taught. I think, like, it's so much talking about it and talking about what it is, what you can do, but like at the end of the day, it's going to kill people.
It
like the serious side of it.
If you see the flooding in Germany and all across
Europe, it's just not killing people that we perceive matter. It's killing people. It's just not shown.
In the news.
It's been killing people in, I don't want to say developing countries, but it's been killing people in different countries for years. Only when it started killing people in Germany, where everyone was like, "Oh,
the wildfires in Turkey that's killed so many people and it's made so many people homeless." But it's not really talked about, because like there's the Olympics at the moment, there's the pandemic, and all that. No one's really talking about it unless they want to talk about it.
And I think a lot of people don't like to admit it. Like, it's not talked about often because we know it's our fault. And like when you know something's your fault, you're obviously going to avoid talking about it because you don't want to admit it.
There's
and I
lots
think
of fear
people need
and
to accept
stigmas surrounding it.
I think a lot of people don't want to take the blame.
I feel like I'd take the blame myself, because I don't think I don't do a lot to help the environment, and I want to do more. It's just hard, like, to access these things that I can do to help, and I obviously I want to look for other options and stuff, and I want things to come available to me, and I will say that I could do more, and I want to do more.
But then it's not putting pressure on that, like little things are massive,
I feel like we blame the public too much as well when it comes to the climate change debate, because like talk about people's plastic consumptions and like cars and public transport, when no one talks about like the big businesses who are
like fishing's really bad.
Fishing and big companies who are putting all the CO2 and stuff, because even if like the big companies cut down on theirs, like their emissions, like we wouldn't have to do as much as a society, so you'd have longer to help.
Absolutely, the public have a role to play. That's undeniable. But the people that have an even bigger role to play and they're not playing their part. And when they start playing their part, people in the public are going to be way more. They're going to want to do it more. And it's like the media you consume tells you a lot about your ideas. So if you have politicians who are openly discrediting climate change, or they're not paying much attention to it, or they're disregarding it as an unimportant topic, what do you think the public are going to think? Like, it starts at the top, and if you have people at the top who are not taking responsibility for what's going on, how can you sit there and blame the public? I mean, obviously people are at fault, but you can't just blame. It's always the blame is put on the working class, the lower classes, and that's not right.
Okay,
I was going to say something that's gone.
I think
veganism. All right.
Okay.
No.
Oh,
Amelia, say
No, I was
point.
going to say, with the politicians, I do think it will take a while for them to realise it's their fault, because a lot of them are very egotistical, and like Danielle was saying about finding a cure, that reflects well on them as they found a cure. So I think it will take a lot of people a long time to admit that it's their fault.
Yeah. And that's why doing things like this and kind of getting more people on board, you could say, will kind of raise that awareness more and actually put pressure on the government to do more, to act on it. So that's why it's important to even just to acknowledge climate change. You know.
Yeah, like last year during all the protests, the Black Lives Matter protests, I mean, not everything is fixed. We're a long way from it being fixed. But the changes that were put in, that was because people were there putting pressure. Well, most people were there putting pressure on the government, putting pressure on their authorities, putting pressure on their schools. And that resulted in not the change that we need yet, but we're getting closer to our goal, which is obviously racial equality. So if we do that again with climate change, if we keep putting the pressure on the authorities, we keep putting pressure on school, we promote education about the climate, we teach people how big of a threat this is, that we'll see the change and it's needed, necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so next topic. The question was, should everyone turn vegan? Which is quite a controversial.
Very.
I know. Yeah, I know that Leon's got some info on that.
He just like whips out like pages full of notes. He's like,
yeah.
A page of notes from a documentary I saw last night. I'm no scientist. Okay, so well, it's just important to note that there's a lot of misconceptions about which industries cause the most impact on our climate, which pump out the most greenhouse gases. A little known fact is 51% of greenhouse gases are emitted by the agriculture industry. That is animals and the food they're given, so the crops that are grown for the animals and the animals themselves. They generate 51% of all greenhouse gas emissions, whereas transportation, the biggest focus in the media and in the government, is only 13%. Which I found shocking when I first heard it, because I thought, why are we putting so much emphasis on transport when 4 times the emissions are emitted by agriculture? It's also important to focus on deforestation. Deforestation, as we all know, is reducing what's called the lungs of the earth. So the the Amazon forest, which absorbs a lot of the CO2. When the Earth was first formed, there was too much CO2 to make the world habitable. It was about 98%. Over the years, plants, trees have taken that out, and now we're destroying them, meaning the sinks that drain the CO2 from our world are being depleted. And 91% of that is also down to agriculture. And I'm not going to say that everyone should turn vegan, but if everyone reduced the meat they ate by 25-50%, we can make that 51% of greenhouse gases emitted to 25%, and that is a massive difference. Absolutely. If almost 50% less rainforests will be destroyed every day, every year, for the rest of time, and that would make a big difference.
Yeah, I feel like people don't always think about diet first. I think it's one of those things that's not probably talked about as much. Like, I know we talked about plastic, and I feel like that's probably more common knowledge than diet is. And I know that recently veganism's become, I don't want to say it, but I suppose it's become sort of a trend in a lot of ways.
Definitely.
People have really got on board, but that's because of raising awareness for it. Because I know that veganuary is a thing. I don't know how long that's been going on, but I know that is a thing for us. But then again, like, it's not saying go and be a vegan, because it's such a hard thing to do. And I think for a lot of people, like health reasons as well, it can be quite dangerous to go vegan. So unless you are confident and you really, really want to, then go for it. But I mean, it's not the be all and end all. It's not the answer. There are, I know that meat-free Mondays has become quite a common thing as well. Like, people maybe don't eat meat during the week, and then on the weekend they'll eat meat. Like, it's fine, I think the overconsumption is when the problem comes and the problems hit, So I think the best thing to do is probably just to reduce the amount of meat consumed.
Yeah.
Which doesn't necessarily mean to cut out or cut any kind of animal produce out whatsoever. But
because I think not everyone, of course, would go vegan, because it's a very Western idea that everyone eats meat and loads of meat. But some people, like if you take like India, a lot of people eat a lot of vegetarian food. Then if you take like Native Americans, eating meat and stuff is part of their culture. So I think there's got to be a balance, and you've got to think about everyone all around the world. It's not just the people like in the UK and stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah, meat is not it's not a requirement. Obviously you have to respect that there are spiritual reasons behind meat, you know, it's a part of a lot of sacrifice, it's a lot of rituals. But there's this weird idea that, you know, meat needs to be consumed every day. It doesn't. Meat has a lot of benefits, and obviously it has health benefits. But we don't need to, at the rate that we're eating meat, it's unattainable. You need to, I think, reducing your consumption of meat is way more effective than eliminating it. And also regarding veganism, obviously, it's much easier because there's way more vegan products than there were before. What I found helpful is swapping out products. So obviously, it's quite difficult to go vegan, just because, like, if you're in a family where not everyone else is vegan, it's very easy to become malnutritioned if you don't do it correctly. It requires planning and meal planning. Not everyone has that time. So realistically, not everyone is financially able to go vegan. Not everyone has the time or to go vegan. So I would recommend maybe swapping out products. So butter, which is not, regular butter, you can swap it out for vegan butter. You know, milk, you can swap it out for oat milk if you like that. Or you can swap out like flour or pasta. You can like swap out like vegan pasta. Because I feel like if we kind of go in the sense that like everyone has to be vegan, you're just gonna like, everyone's gonna like run away, because that's not something I'm not vegan. That's not something people want to do. So I think instead of being like, let's cut this out, let's reduce. I was watching Meet Me Halfway, and I was heard about that documentary. And it was just about how we can just reduce our meat consumption, because people who eat meat regularly are responsible for producing, I think it's around 1.5 tons more greenhouse gases. And obviously, if you remember about the greenhouse effect from before, that's not great. That's going to lead to global warming and all the disasters that we're having now. So I think if we just kind of provide alternatives, we have Beyond Meat, where like a lot of restaurants are now doing like meatless meals. If we just kind of create a balance, I think that's much better. We don't have to, we need to stray away from this binary thinking. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. If we create a balance, it's way more effective for everyone. It's more inclusive.
But it's
I think people have
sometimes
this concept of, go on, Amelia.
Because sometimes, like, because Danielle was talking about like substituting food, sometimes meat substitutes aren't as good for you. Like, there's like this vegan bacon that actually has more salt in than normal bacon.
Oh,
so
really?
Some people, so sometimes it doesn't always have a health benefit, but you've got to stop looking at like meat alternatives, but start using stuff that is like a source of protein but isn't a meat alternative, like lentils and chickpeas. Like start incorporating other things into your diet rather than substituting.
Yeah, like I was gonna say, like people have this conception of vegetarianism is just leave and like like it's totally not. Like I've made some banging vegetarian meals, it's not all like boring and green and you can make some really good stuff. You just need to get out there and get experimental with food. Like not everything always has to have meat in it, It's better, like often, like a lot better than having meat.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing I was going to say is about local produce. Like if you have a market available where you can get local produce, so like that's fantastic, because it obviously reduces carbon footprint and carbon emissions. So if you live near a farm, for example, you can get eggs from like local farms. If you've got chickens or something, or an allotment is fantastic. You can grow so much in this country and people don't think about. Obviously, granted, some things are quite exotic and you can't get here. But for other things like tomatoes or herbs and things, and it reduces like plastic as well. Like if you can grow strawberries during summer, then you don't have to go and buy a punnet, you know. And as well with meat, like if you've got a farm nearby and you want local meat produce, then that's great too because it cuts down on carbon emissions.
You were saying this earlier. I don't know if you forgot. It was quite a while ago, and you were saying about like the issue isn't with the local farms because at the end of the day, they're not really responsible. Well, obviously, they produce meat, but compared to the real enemy is factory farming. That's the real issue. I don't know if you want to go, more into that, Liam, because obviously I think you know more about that than I do. But
well, I mean, yeah, if we all ate meat that came from local farms run by farmers, where the animals had all the space in the world and they were given good healthy food, then there would really not be any issue in terms of the climate. But it's because we have these factory farms where animals are just packed into tiny spaces, and it's obviously this isn't the topic we're talking about, but it's incredibly distressing for the animals, and many people are vegan on that principle alone.
Yeah.
Oh God, yeah. Like ethically, it's disgusting. You know, like the conditions that these are animals. You know, they have feelings too.
Yeah,
and I feel
like that. People mock people for saying that, Amy, but it's true. Like animals do, like I don't know. Obviously, like there's hierarchy or whatever, but we used to have to treat animals with respect. Like I don't know what they're not just. It's their planet as well. You know, obviously you have humans and animals, but like it's together. It's not just like a complete domination. It's so odd.
Yeah, I feel like everyone has like loads of people nowadays think humans are like the rulers of the world and they're the most important. Everything's for them, but all these animals came before us. Yeah, we're kind of intruding. Like
you won't really be anywhere without the animals.
Yeah, like they're
an
the
animal millions of years ago.
Yeah,
they keep the ecosystem going.
Yeah, exactly.
So appreciate the animals, guys.
Yeah.
Animals.
Yeah. Okay.
Helpful with people like Piers Morgan. I think like discredited. I think the attitude towards veganism, although it hasn't changed greatly, it's definitely shifting. I know, like a couple of years ago, it was kind of a topic that was just laughed at. Veganism,
so demonized.
Piers Morgan, jeering at it on TV, which is just so unhelpful. And obviously, there's a section of the vegan community, like there's a section of any community that are extreme. But if like we look at it now, I mean. It's not like how it was perceived before, and I think there's such negative press around it, and it's just like no.
If you tell someone you're going vegan, they're like, "Oh, are you eating grass?"
Yeah.
What is that?
What's that about?
It's like I do have an appendix, but it doesn't really appeal to me.
No, that's right. I think the kind of reputation that veganism has at the moment is not fantastic.
Yeah.
But again, as the future progresses, I think it will definitely, and it is like a lot of things slowly becoming accepted and kind of taught, but as well, that's with the younger generation, because like if you went to your parents, for example, don't know about yours, but if I was to say vegan, like what? No, it's stupid. But they've been brought up so differently to how we are now. I mean, obviously they're bringing this up, but I think with social media and the advances in science, it's we can make the change.
It is about people's attitudes, and with social media and everything, you have the chance to change people's attitudes.
Yeah. So just to wrap it up, it's definitely about reducing the consumption of meat, and you can do that by trying to swap out products, using a more vegetarian-based diet without committing to being a vegetarian. It's about, trying to avoid shopping from factory farm products and trying to, if you can, obviously we're not bullying anyone who can't afford the locally sourced products because they are quite more expensive, but if you can, try and go to your local farmers instead of kind of just running to the, I
think something else about bulk. I don't understand this fully, but something to do with bulk buying food that helps the environment in some way. I'm guessing it cuts down on carbon emissions. Yeah, like obviously, like when you look in the cupboard, like, oh, my cereal's run out, and you quickly run to the shop or get in the car and go to the shop and then get like one thing
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think
Because
I
if you
don't
buy something that's
true.
bigger,
Yeah, I
you're
think he was,
using less plastic.
Is it the different trips that you make
Yeah.
in the car? I think that reduces.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's kind of good advice. And I know it's hard in the family. Obviously, if you're living with your parents, your siblings, or whoever, it's hard because a lot of the times you eat with them. So like I don't know about you, but we have Sunday dinner every Sunday.
Yeah.
And Christmas dinner, like certain traditional, cultural, religious things. That, as you say, demand sometimes that you have to eat meat, and that's fine, or you whatever. Like it's fine. It's part of life now, you know. And you need to respect that. This is it. It's about respect. Like respect if someone wants to be vegan. Respect if someone wants to be a vegetarian, pescatarian, or if they want to eat meat. Like it's totally fine. I think it's just being aware of the amount of meat that's consumed and where the meat is coming from.
Because we don't want to alienate anyone for any way they eat or their views.
Yeah.
But I think it all boils down to the first question about plastic bags. It just requires a bit of thought, a bit of planning, just to think about what you're doing and maybe change your. Because we've all lived like we have for all of our lives. If we could just look at one thing, think I've done that forever, but if I change that might make a difference.
Yeah. Be mindful. Mindful eating is so important, and that was the thing, when I kind of went on this journey to improve my eating, instead of dieting, which diet culture is a whole different conversation. Mindful, just being aware of what you're eating is so much better for you. Just being instead of just doing it mindlessly, just eating rubbish mindlessly, or eating so much meat, or doing this mindlessly, just be oh, maybe I could switch this out today, maybe I could not eat this today, or just try this different style of food today, or try something out. If you just be conscious, just think of it. It's tough. We're not all perfect. We eat meat. I think most of us here eat meat not regularly, but maybe once a month, but if you make an effort, an attempt to try and reduce it, and just try and be conscious while you're eating, I think it can make the world a better place.
That's the whole point. But to round it up a bit, what are the kind of the things you can take away from this? What are the best measures to be taken to reduce
carbon emission?
Well, all of it. The best things.
I think it's looking at what you're eating, like Danielle said, and not just always looking at meat substitutes. What's something new you could try that doesn't cause as much CO2 emissions?
Yeah. And as well with plastic, just kind of researching and looking into kind of little swaps that you can make. Like I talked about razors, and I know that you can get, for example, soap. A lot of people have. I mean, we do. You get the pump soaps, in the plastic. You can get soap bars. They were used all the time. Soap in a pump didn't exist until really quite recently. But that's a convenience side again. But you can get soap bars, and I think they smell better. They're just nicer anyway. And it's not expensive. You can get soap bars.
The past is a sketchy place, but there are certain things that we should learn from our past. Things like Amy said, soap bars. A lot of things we use nowadays, people think, oh, I couldn't live without it. People did live without it. There was a time that people lived without plastic. There was a time that people lived without soap wrapped in plastic. There's certain convenience in plastic, which obviously Amelia discussed. But it's not impossible to go back to a time, not go back to that time, but it's not impossible to bring stuff back. We do have time.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm you about returning to the past, but it is, people were happy back then. It's not like
you've got to think there's less population.
Well, not everyone was happy back then, Leon. But
not everyone was happy.
People lived in overcrowded homes, didn't have soap, even if it was just the bar.
They're colour and all that.
But no, that was the thing. Fast fashion industry.
Yeah.
When we talk about when we talked about recycling and reusing, charity shopping has become really quite popular, and I love it. I think it's much more exciting than going to H&M or something. Vintage clothing is amazing. You can find it anywhere, and it's often so much cheaper, you know.
Personally, I'm a bit like, I want to get into it, but I
Yeah.
just think about things being clean. So if I do buy something secondhand, I always clean it first and stuff.
Oh yeah, 100%. There
Yeah.
are different prices and advantages.
Yeah.
Even just
as well, because I've got vintage bits in charity shops.
But-
It's like things that are not in fashion anymore. But like everything, it always comes back round, and I think you can be quite unique about it. You know, like get your own style, and, you know.
yeah.
But I think you've also got to think about a lot of things with fast fashion is overconsumption. But if you're shopping from these charity shops every weekend, that's still not the best because you're over-consuming.
Yeah.
So I think the things with fast fashion shops, if you're using them just for the price, instead of doing like £700 Shein hauls, like just using them every so often when you need it because it's cheaper, they're still okay as long as it's not overconsumption, which is what's leading to the CO2 and everything.
Yeah, absolutely, Amelia. Yeah, definitely. I think particularly with a lot of, obviously there's the cheaper side of vintage, but as vintage got more popular, like, obviously people want to capitalize off it, and there you have people taking advantage of it, and you know, sending up. I mean, we've all been on Depop, you know, Depop's rocketing up like these 90s Dior jackets, like £7,000. It's just absolutely ridiculous. So it's definitely about buying clothes, and when you're buying clothes, make sure you keep the clothes and make sure you're buying clothes that you like and stuff.
Rewearing them. There's no shame in rewearing.
Take your mom's stuff that she doesn't wear anymore, reuse it. You know, because like obviously we don't want to overconsume, but we also want to reuse the stuff that we have. We don't want to. I mean, weekly shopping hauls. That's ridiculous. How many jeans? How many jeans do you really need?
So many people capitalize off of the shopping hauls, like TikTokers and YouTubers. It's the content they create, but they've got to think about the impact they're having.
Yeah. I mean, that is like little, like we talk about little changes you can make. Like the best way, or the best kind of start is to just look in your cupboards, look in your drawers. What have you got? What can you?
What have you been wearing in a while?
Yeah, like I think, did you say there's no shame in re-wearing clothes? Like, I think like people like, you don't want to wear the same thing twice.
What is that about?
Like, I don't care. Like, if you love it, you wear it. It doesn't matter, and no one's that bothered, I think. Well, I'm not anyway.
I'm not bothered.
Weird people are, but you know.
I mean, if you're creative, you never need to wear anything twice. You know, you buy a top and some jeans, you just put them with different items of clothing. You can always wear different things. Just if you have
jeans as top, wear top as jeans, like
totally mixed up, and then like obviously you can use old materials, like if there's a top that you really hate but you love the fabric of, make a headband out of it, make scrunchies out of it, use it to clean with, you know, like there's so many things that you can change into other things that gives them a whole new life, a whole new purpose. So yeah, just it's thinking ahead again.
Yeah, because like I didn't really know until like a few months ago that me going and shopping and like shopping online wasn't like the greatest option. Like, so I think it's like letting people know that doing it every so often is good, but doing it in big, like doing massive hauls and stuff, isn't like the best for the environment and for people.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Being mindful again.
Yeah, and if cleanliness is a big issue for you, like there are lots of sustainable fashion brands. Like I have a couple, like Lucy and Yak, Organic Basics, the Named Collective, Wear Hundreds Club. Yeah, there are tons of and obviously not if they are. I have to admit, like they're not a lot more expensive, but they're a couple more pounds expensive than the cheaper options.
Because I use this shop called Broken Planet Market, and they check their factories, make sure everything's being made right and in good conditions. They use like organic fabrics and stuff, so it is more expensive. But when you come to like sustainable fashion, the most sustainable way to shop is to not shop.
Shop less.
And I think it's worth putting more money into something to one thing and knowing that it's sustainable and from a good place than buying loads of little things that are going to last you like a week, you know?
Yeah.
It's often that sustainable things have had more thought and care put into them, which therefore means that they will last you longer, you know, they're cared for. When fast fashion, really, it's not, it's fast fashion. It's made so quick by, in awful conditions, you know, it's just so that you can have it for a very small amount of time or forget about it, you know.
I mean, ethics comes into every aspect of this debate.
God,
really,
yeah.
isn't it?
I think with fast fashion as well, it can be quite inaccessible. Not fast fashion, sorry, it's sustainable fashion can be quite inaccessible to like plus size people or people can't afford it.
Absolutely.
Sometimes when you talk about the ethical side, it can be for like kind of victim blaming, but you're not because it's not available to some people.
Yeah, it's like everything. You've just got to look at your life and what is available to you and do what you can with it. Like, there's no shame if you can't. It's all about what you have available and what you can do. So
yeah, just be a consumer. Think about where your clothes are coming from. Think where you can get clothes cheaper from. Look out your local charity shops. Donate if you want to buy a pair of clothes. Donate a pair of clothes. Like, just kind of think.
Think smart.
Move on to the next question.
No. The last thing was just about should people feel obliged to change their lifestyle for the environment, which is kind of what we've been picking up on throughout, you know.
I don't think everyone should feel obliged. I think there's certain people who've had a massive impact. So again, big businesses, like their impact on the environment is quite larger than someone who like does the weekly shopping at Tesco and has single-use plastic. So you've got to think about who you're blaming and who should feel obliged. Like, everyone should do something, but the amount they do affects like what I've got the point. But
yeah, I mean, it's not even a blame game, because at the end of the day, we are all responsible. There are people who have more power than the general public, and therefore with power comes responsibility. So by that logic, there are certain people who have more responsibility than others. But I think it's worth instilling in people that they have a duty, you know, to look after the environment. It's the attitude of, oh well, what I do doesn't matter, that drove us into Brexit in the first place. You know, my vote doesn't matter, my opinion doesn't matter. That took us into that mess because not a lot of people voted. So if you kind of think, I know, like, as individuals we feel like we can't do that much, but you think, like, if we all do our bit, you know, think of what that can do.
It's Danielle. It's not all or nothing. You know, anything you do helps. It's really easy to feel disconnected from this whole thing, just because it is hard. It's hard to bear it all in mind, to always be thinking about it, and to try and hold some sort of responsibility for the mess that our collective population has sort of left the world in. But, you know, it's not down to you, but if you do something, it will make a difference.
Absolutely.
So little changes. Do what you can.
I just feel like if we want a nice world, if we want a place to live that we can where we can have, like, I don't know, if you want it to stay the way we are, we do have to do something, or even maybe go back, because the way we are right now isn't the best either, because we are getting to that point where we never know when the weather is. There's massive bushfires, there's loads of flooding, and it's getting to the point where people can't live. And I feel like we should think about it, and I know it might be hard, but I think thinking about it, even just like thinking, like, I need to maybe just help a bit, or I need to recycle today. That might help.
You're being like less selfish about it and think about how it might affect someone else. What effects it's having on the planet.
Like, directly it's not affecting you in that moment, but you know, it could really affect, even if it's not another person, it's the planet, you know, it's the animals on the planet. Because at the end of the day, we all live here. And if you want to continue living, I know it sounds really serious and harsh, then take care of it. You know?
Yeah, it's like if we don't do all, who is? Like, there's no one else who's gonna change anything. It's up to us to do something for this planet.
Yeah, because like a lot of people, because they think like people in power won't do it, they're doing like strikes. So like there's a day, like I think it's October, where they say like don't go to work because it shows like to protest it, and like there's a lot of protests organised to like say like look, we want to do something about it.
Yeah, you've got a voice as well, you know. Use it, yeah. I know that sounds really cliche and it's said all the time, but you literally have a voice and you're allowed to write letters, you're allowed to speak to people, you're allowed to get in touch and do anything that you can to make the tiniest change. Even if it doesn't go anywhere, you still made that effort to make a difference.
Yeah, the time is now. You know, we have time, not as much time as we like to think. We have under a decade, so that's enough time to make a change. We can do it. People can do it. We've seen great movements in the past of people banding together and getting things done. We can. It's possible. It's just a matter of when we're going to do it and when we're going to decide it's a large problem. But I think it'll be helpful if we just kind of collect all the tips that we've kind of scattered across the video and kind of podcast film, whatever, and kind of just kind of outline what our main tips were, just so people go away thinking like, yeah, I'm going to start doing that.
So like have a long-term plan. So like instead of going out and buying a meal deal, like make your lunch at home. Stuff like that. Yeah,
and it's not like an immediate thing. Like you can't go away and be like, right, I'm going to buy all this stuff so that I can reuse it, and I'm going to completely cut out meat. I'm going to, you know, all this. Can't do that.
Baby steps.
Journey. Yeah, it's a journey. It's small changes, and it doesn't all have to be done at the same time. You know, so
yeah, it's like you can do little things slowly. Like when you can incorporate things to your life, because obviously there'll be points in your life when you can't maybe afford to do anything, but when you are at a point in your life when you can do something like maybe little, just like recycling or reusing stuff, just think, oh, I'll do that today, or I'll do that in a few weeks. I'll go out and buy some bags that I can reuse instead of continuously buying plastic bags.
Yeah,
just be conscious, like consume consciously, eat consciously, not like watch what you eat, but like be mindful of what you're putting in your body. Is it nutritious? Not nutritious, but like where is it coming from? Like where is it being sourced? And like, you know, everyone has a burger from time to time, a McDonald's burger, but like just like you know, just be you know, mindful. Be mindful where you shop. Everything all your actions, they do matter. I know it feels like they don't, but be mindful where you shop. Be mindful, you know, who you give your money to. Because that's a huge part of it, and you know, just do good, guys. Not do good, like try.
I feel like it's also coming like a full cycle. Like all the plastic we're putting in the sea, all the fish are consuming that, and then we're consuming that fish. And it is all gonna come back to us. I just feel like you might not care about the fish, but you will.
When you eat your fish and chips, plastic fall out the fish.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it is affecting you whether you know it or not. It just it is. Okay, is that?
I think that's everything.
I think that's it. Well, there's some charities that we kind of recommend. I know Amy had one, Friends of the Earth. That's a great charity.
Yeah, very good to look into. There was. Obviously on YouTube you can find all sorts of sustainable, eco-friendly, whatever.
We're gonna link some stuff in the description
below.
Yeah, it will be on the YouTube channel, Generation Green. Tell your friends, okay?
Conversations.
Yeah, talk to people. Yeah, talk to your parents. You know, don't touch nice. Just be like, Mum, do you really need to buy? You know, what about this?
You really need those drumsticks? No.
I mean, don't be preachy, you know, you still want people to like you.
Yeah.
Oh god, yeah,
don't like start holding pictures of pigs being like slashed in front of people and leave.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching.
Yeah, thank you.
Generation Green.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.